Hello, this is a 1981 Proline center console powered by a 1981 Johnson 50 horsepower outboard. Owner says put in a Amazon water pump kit. It's working fine for 2 or 3 months, then overheated on him at the lake. Apparently, warning buzzer went off. He shut the motor off and used the trolling motor to get back in. And that is the right thing to do. The motor power head itself shows no signs of overheating, no chip paint or anything, so he probably saved the motor doing that. Anyway, we're going to start it up, see if it is ping, and then take it from there. Well, he's right. That water pump ain't doing nothing. I already checked for a clogged overboard indicator. That ain't it. So it's definitely not pumping. So let's take it apart. Given how big this boat is, it tows quite well. The Ranger didn't even know it was back here. And that's saying something. So we have an originally white motor, spray painted black. That's quite common. We have newer coils already installed. Champion QL77 JC4s. We have a replacement CDI ignition harness. All right, well, it idles okay. The choke needs a little bit of attention. Looks like we have new rollers already installed, 2 of them. So 2 new, 2 original. That's pretty good. Its linkage is right in the start point. He wanted me to look it over to make sure the timing is okay. And yeah, the only real, true, honest way to do that is to have it in the lake with the timing light. But you can still look at the marks. So the start, when we give it some throttle, the start will advance to there. Where it is now idling, neutral, it should be at that line, and we're right on the line. So as far as the slow speed timing goes, I see no issues right off the bat. It's probably running on both cylinders given how it sounded and how well it started, even with only one functioning choke. Probably not a bad motor. So we can see the paint, it's nice, so no overheating. We have new battery cables. Can't tell if the starter's hot or if the engine's hot from sitting out in the sun until I got it in here. Gray fuel lines I'm not a fan of. He mentioned that he just put those on there, so no reason to change them if they ain't broken. Up, out. You hear that? So our primer bulb is soft when it shouldn't be. Let me shine some light on it for you. We have 2 things that could be happening. One is the fuel pump. The other one is this top hose. Because leaks. So that's not ideal. A fuel leak in a motor you really don't want. It's probably not necessarily the hose. It's probably the, well, it's probably the hose. Who we kidding? So these clear hoses, this probably was clear at one point in time. You see a lot of these everywhere on mostly power sports stuff because they make small hoses and they're all the see-through. See-through hoses are absolutely great because you can see what's going on. The problem is they don't last for more than a few months. A few months and they just turn into kind of brittle and they start falling apart. It's really not good hose, but it is great for diagnosing a problem because you can see if the fuel's flowing in there. They have their place. I don't believe permanently installed onto a carburetor is their place. Seeing if the engine's going to run okay, that's their place. So should change that. Getting to it's going to be incredibly difficult because the air cleaner is going to have to come off. It may not have to, actually. I could probably get to it with them on there, but not easily. So air cleaner comes off, fuel line gets replaced. Not the end of the world. We have a aftermarket fuel pump. The guy said he knows that they don't have a good reputation. He bought a spare that he keeps on the boat, and he bought this one, and it seems to be working fine. So if it's working, it's staying there. Now, I did tell him my hack for these. A used pump like this, you can get on eBay for like 20 to 30 bucks. And then a rebuild kit's like 20 bucks. So you can buy both, and for, half price of one of these, not half, double the price of one of these, you can have a good as new OEM one. And it's not like a water pump to where it's hard to change. You could easily, especially on this boat where, I could have a sleeping bag right here if I wanted to. It's easy to change. It'd take 5-10 minutes, especially since he used hose clamps and not the zip ties like I would have used. And even then, you only got to take off one because you can just undo the screw, pop this off, put on the new one. It's a quick change. Bring a spare. When and if it dies, it's not a big deal. Now, if it was at all like my Sea King, to where good luck getting to the screws, then I'd say get OEM. The mounting screws are there, but you can't get on them straight. So the throttle, that's a little concerning to me. That looks like it's in further than it should be. I should check that, but I'm not going to do it right now. Battery seems like it's nearly dead, so I'll probably charge it up and then tackle that. For right now, what we are trying to do is tackle the lower and then the carburetors. So to get the lower off, I got to get the starter off, and I just noticed we don't have a bracket. At least we don't have a functioning bracket up here anymore. Let's see if I have another starter I can swap him out. You can see quite a bit of wear on the starter teeth. It's probably because of the broken starter bracket there, causing alignment to just be a hair off, giving us some grinding. I had a complaint from another return customer saying that the videos kind of didn't paint the owner in the best light. And I tried to explain to him, like, that wasn't my intention. I'm not knocking the owner of the boat whatsoever. What I'm trying to do is to, explain my concerns with things I see as I see them through my eyes. It may not be a good way to do it, but we can show the concerns, like that leaky fuel line. Anybody that put that on there may be insulted by me saying this is not a good fuel line. And then I touch it and it springs a leak. It just shows my point. That's what I'm trying to say. And don't get me wrong, that's the 5/32 fuel line. You're not just strolling into AutoZone and getting that. But you can get a 4mm clear translucent line like that, which isn't any good. And this starter is hotter than the rest of the motor. I'm pretty sure we have a pretty significant power draw. So it's probably time to get a starter for it. But it works now. I could probably clean the brushes for him, get a little more life out of it. But if we open up that can of worms for unauthorized repair, we may have issues. So I will tell him the starter is pretty easy to do. It's nothing a common person couldn't figure out, so I'll let him decide if he wants to put a starter in it. I might even do an amp draw test on it. Don't know. But for the record, this does not look like it's the proper starter for this motor. This looks like it's a late 60s, early 70s electric shift starter. You can tell by just the grain of it. The bottom cap, they stopped looking like that when electric shift went away, really. So I can hold my hand here and I can feel the warmth from the engine out in the sun. But that starter's a lot hotter. And you heard it when I started it, and boom. So it might be done for us. So anyway, needed to take that off to get to the shift pin, which is down inside of there. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. Right there. So, need to get that. Why do I have gas on me already? Did I bump something? Yeah, probably. Or something else is leaking. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you, but that is the shift pin bolt. I got to pull that out. It's just a little pin. So the shift pin looks like. I can smell the anti-seize on these bolts as I take them out. So somebody cared, but I don't know what this paste is about. Anyway, the reason I clean up the bolts and then I do it, you know, wire wheel the bolts, is so you don't see all this stuff. So anti-seize got applied, but bolts weren't cleaned beforehand. But that's good enough usually. All right, there is our Amazon water pump kit. If you notice, we have a O-ring, drive shaft O-ring hanging out down the bottom, and nothing up top. And we also have dirty splines, so we'll get that cleaned up for them too. But first, let's get this water pump off. See if we can identify a failure. Some white corrosion. Definitely have anti-seize on those bolts as well. I don't believe the Amazon kit comes with screws. It might. I don't know. So those might be old screws, new screws. Who knows? O-ring's got to go. All right, one would fly. Okay, so picked up the pieces here. The water pump. Oh yeah. The title of this video should be Amazon water pump. How good are they? I haven't seen the rubber deteriorate from that brass like that before, and I've seen a lot of bad water pumps, but that's kind of a first for me. All right, well anyway, we definitely need a water pump, and we're not going to screw around with an impeller. We're going to get a whole kit. All right, good news. Piecing the impeller back together. We have all the impeller pieces. However, our exhaust seal off of our little plate here, that's kind of a problem. Is there a chance exhaust gases were getting where they're not supposed to be? I mean, probably. Did that cause this water pump failure? I doubt it. Because this isn't falling apart. The silicone inside of it is, but it itself, it's fine. All right, got some parts to order. I'll see you in a week. Well, I got the gasket surface pretty cleaned up. Got the holes tapped. I'm still having a problem with the lower actually accepting a screw. Like, you can force them in there, but it's not nice, especially the front. So I'm just going to run a drill down it. Clean all the solvent, corrosion, whatever else is going on in there out. And the next size up. I know you may not be able to tell, but there's all kinds of stuff falling out of here. Okay, water pump is here. 439077 is our part number. Right off the bat, I can tell we're going to have stellar instructions. Give this owner... This kit is used on 79 through 88, 40 through 55 horsepower outboards. Yeah, apparently I forgot 60 horsepowers too. But anywho, 2 different size impeller keys provided. Terminal keys measure the diameter of the shaft. Our drive shaft is just shy of 1/2 inch, which means we are using the larger key. If it was over 1/2 inch, the 5.46, we would use the smaller key. Pretty straightforward. screws. Naturally get the anti-seize gasket compound on there. So this was my concern with having those posters in the background, is you wouldn't be able to see what I'm actually doing. But I'm installing the O-ring onto the drive shaft. Now we'll get some moly lube. Put it onto the splines. Just touch the camera phone screen with my greasy glove. Not my smartest of moments. Anyway, I got the new exhaust gaskets because it needed it. That feels so nice. I've touched a lot of these things. You know, you think they're in good condition until you feel it, what a new one feels like. Oh, world of difference. Pretty nice. Anyway, we need to keep these from falling off when we install them. So that's where the 3M, I think it's 847, comes into play. So that goes there. The bottom, I've already cleaned up the area around here. Anyway, so let me put some right inside of here. This was pretty bad too when I got it. How this looked. Gonna install it so that little bevel is up. Oh, that can't get over how nice that feels. So when we put this in, it'll just kind of find its home and self-center it right inside of there. Can almost go get this in now. I'm kind of debating if I should put this into the exhaust, because there's a good chance it'll stay once the 3M stuff dries. I mean, that's probably going to fall out, let's be honest. So it may not be a bad idea. How sticky is this stuff? Yeah, it's not great. Yeah, we'll cross that bridge over there. Alright, got one bolt coated in the compound stuff. I'm going to slide the lower in, see how this goes. Gotta line the shift rod into the grommet. Gotta line up water pump tube, which we are there. Now, crankshaft splines. Now, when I say crankshaft splines, what I meant was I needed to rotate the flywheel to line up the splines with the crankshaft so it would slide in. Problem is, I put the camera right in my way, so I pushed you out of the way so I could reach the flywheel and rotate. When I did that, lower slid right on. We have a new water pump seal in there, so it stops about that shy before, and then a little bit of effort slides all the way in. Now, before going any further, we want to make sure that our shift rod actually aligned where it's supposed to. And you can see no shift rod in there. So it's in there, it just got shifted down a little bit, so I'll have to get in there with a pick and pull it up to line up with the shifter again. But it's in there, which means I can install the rest of the bolts onto this lower. Would also like to mention having cleaned up hardware, freshly tapped bolts, made this thing just a breeze to get that lower back on. Now the shift pin, on the other hand, that's a whole different ball game. It getting pushed down when it slid through the grommet, I mean, that's not a problem. It's just the shifter isn't aligned. So what I would need to do is have somebody in the boat operating the shifter down for me while I line this up. Doing it by myself, my only option really is to disconnect. Well, I guess I can crawl in the boat, do it myself, come back here, see what, yeah, let's do that. All right, shift pin is back in. Gonna cut off the zip tie here. We should be able to get to it without opening up the carb covers. At least that's the hope and dream. Now this is a little concerning, having this hose leaking, because let's say it like fully failed while you were, underway. With any luck, it would have been at slow speed, and I think when you lose this bottom carburetor, because the main fuel line feeds the top carburetor, the small line then feeds the bottom carburetor. So if you lose this hose up here, you're also losing, well, fuel everywhere, as well as your bottom carburetor. So if you're going at slow speed, with any luck, the engine wouldn't have enough power to keep moving, and the engine would die, and then you'd smell the gas and hopefully realize there's an issue. The bigger concern is if it failed while you're going fast. You'd probably lose, well, most of your performance, but I think you'd still probably be able to move. I think going that higher RPMs, you'd probably have a little while of the fuel pressure, or the RPMs putting out enough fuel pressure to keep the top carburetor fed, even with the massive leak that you now have. So I think you would just, the engine would, let's say, drop half of its RPMs, but you'd still be moving. You'd be spraying gas everywhere, and you'd be overheating that bottom cylinder pretty quickly. So it's kind of a concern to get that thing changed. I don't know, maybe there'd be an experiment someday. See what actually happens if you do lose that line. Well, I had hoped I have a better starter to give him, but I don't. So this one's going back on. Now he did mention that he wanted me to look at the timing plate because it seemed loose when he was putting these cables on. So I told him I didn't notice anything. He said, well, pop off the cable, see if it feels weird at high RPM or full throttle. So not a problem, I'll do that. We got some play in the linkage, but that's not really a concern as long as it pushes it up against the throttle stop, which it's doing. It's real tight coming back. It's loose, so I don't quite know what that's about. So it advances forward just fine because of the spring. It's kind of guiding it. And even if it wasn't, the little pusher bolt there kind of takes over and pushes it the rest of the way. Pulling it back isn't easy. I don't know if this is necessarily a problem. Yeah, the only thing I see loose is the linkage. It's a little ball socket, fits into a ball. You can see on the top, kinda. You can see on the top it's missing a little tooth. It might be giving a little more wobble than normal. The bottom, it might be too, but it's in there and it's holding fine. The plate's moving back and forth, and the plate itself really doesn't have any weird wear. The only thing I would be a little more concerned with is how far in that throttle stop is. We can kind of check the timing. Did you see that? Did you see the problem with the spark plugs? Take a look at that top spark plug wire that I just unplugged and look what coil it goes to. So we might as well. Well, he says it acts a little weird at high speed, almost like it misses a little. Could be because of a fuel leak, or maybe something is going on with that plate, but I don't know. So far, I don't see it. Spark plugs look fine, old but fine. This is our top dead center finder. Right about there. And our top dead center pointer is right on top dead center. So far we are good. Okay, this engine should be at maximum spark advance, seeing 21 degrees, give or take 3 degrees, I believe it says. 1 degree? Anyway, about 21 degrees. So, when we do the slow speed wide open throttle test, we -4, so we're at 17 degrees. I got a little piece of tape on it, make it easy to see. Got the timing light. I'm gonna hit the button, see where it lines up. All right, it's got some zip tie timing holders installed. So let's see how it looks. We're not that far off. Actually, we might be. Yeah. So we are at 21 degrees, and that is kind of a problem. Theory of operation here, when this thing is at actual, full speed, we're gaining more spark advance, meaning we would be at 25 degrees. And that's a little high. All right, just got off the phone with the owner. I asked him about the timing and see if he ever put a timing light on it or if he ever messed with it at all. He said, nope, haven't done anything. That's how I got it. So to me, it really, really looks like somebody timed this with a timing light without being in the water, just cranking it like I did, only without subtracting the 4 degrees you're supposed to. So I was talking to the owner and said, hey, he said he didn't touch it, but he also said it doesn't feel right at full RPM. It sounds like it's running just way too fast. So he doesn't go full speed because it doesn't feel right. And given where our timing is, he's probably right. The owner of this thing, genius, I think. Warning horns going off, trolls back in without using the main motor. Save the engine right there. Sounds like it's over revving? Oh, better not do that either. It's just, if everybody had that knowledge of, doesn't seem right, I'm not going to do this, we would have so many more of these motors on the market because they wouldn't be blown up. So here is my clue that there might have been something wrong with the timing. That's sticking out pretty far, in my opinion. I don't think that should be right. Anyway, so if you want to see the manual, timing light, 21 degrees before top dead center. It doesn't actually tell you, one turn is 1 degree, but I think that's the case. Anyway, so we have a picture of the example of where the screw should be from the factory, and you can see it's not anything looking like how ours is. So, yeah. All right. In case we need to put this thing back, I'm going to measure the distance of the back of the screw to the housing. So we are at 1.0940. And we go back to 0 and we're accurate. Check it again. 1.09. All right, so 1.09, give or take 4 thousandths. That's where we need to be. I'm going to record this in case it ever comes back. All right, let's hit a 7/16, it looks like, down here. All right, well, apparently I am really good at this because that is spot on 17 degrees. So that's the Joe Reeves ignition timing method that I just did. which I've been reading that post for, 10 plus years now about how to do that. And for the longest time, nobody's ever complained about it. Everybody's always said, oh, it worked great, perfect, this is the way to do it. It's not until recent times where I started seeing more and more criticism of it, which is kind of funny. Not funny as in a ha-ha, funny, strange. Because the tool supply is long dried up for test propellers. So back when that came out, you could buy a test propeller for this motor and prove that theory. Now that you can't prove that theory, more and more deniers, I guess you could call them. People who are skeptical of it, maybe. Anyway, you see more and more of these septics coming out saying, "Now I don't know if I trust that method." Or, I mean, yeah, I agree. I started making a video, never hit record. Basically, I took all my low-hour, never been messed with motors, and I tested the timing on all of them. I know you've seen me do that in a couple of videos before, but it was basically just all of them in one kind of video. And all of them were spot on where they should be using his method. So I've always trusted it. The only way to truly test it again is to find a timing wheel and compare before and, with the timing wheel. And you can find timing wheels for anything under 35 horsepower all day long. Once you hit 40 horsepower, when you really need that timing wheel, can't find them. So in my experience, I guess I'm trying to say, is it has been accurate. And considering it's the only way we can do it, it works pretty well. But then again, I criticize things constantly, so who am I to judge? If you want to criticize it, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I think skeptics are always good, like somebody says something and then if everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, great job, it would never be disproven, You need those skeptics to say, "Yeah, I don't think so," and then prove otherwise, Almost kind of like that's how science works. Well, I found the problem. Just your standard problem that never should have existed. This power pack isn't quite right for this motor, but it's one of the newer ones. It uses the newer coils, so it's fine. But the wires are a little different length, so I think when whoever put it on, it was an easier fit to swap the coils. Anyway, so basically what I'm saying is the top coil is for the bottom cylinder, and the bottom cylinder is the top coil. So it's a little weird, but whatever. We're going to fix it now, and that should do it. I'm going to recheck the timing again. I don't think it'll be an issue. Now, at some point, the owner mentioned that if I were to use the choke, the engine would just flat out not start, and advised against using the choke. So I decided to pop the carburetors off to have a look and see what was going on. Alright, carburetors have been rebuilt. Don't know if it's an aftermarket or an OEM, but I can tell you that float level is a little on the high side. Pull up the gauge. Nowhere near where we should be. Not even close. Alright. Now our float's okay. Okay, here's the bottom. Float's too high. tell already just by looking at it. It's peering up. Yeah, I know angles are hard to see on the camera, but you can see the gauge. So let's put it where it's supposed to be. So we're only, what is that, a 1/16 of an inch off? From there to the bottom. But it's off enough. That's too much. It's good. I like checking parallelism on the side. We're a little low in this corner, but I'm not going to worry about it because the back and the front and the sides are okay. Now that carburetor gauge, it's a little hard for some people to eyeball parallel. So I can understand why the floats would get kind of misadjusted. That may or may not have caused the problem. There was actually a lot of problems with that motor. It was all the throttle synchronization. Everything was off. I had to go through everything to get that thing dialed back into where it's supposed to be. But it's done, and that led me to think of something else. These carburetor float gauges, they are long discontinued. And unless, now I'm sure somewhere somebody has a small stockpile of them. Like perhaps when they had a carburetor job, they knew they didn't know where they put the last one and just ordered one, and now they have a small pile of them. But for the most part, from the factory, not available anymore. So I had the idea I would make some up and then give them away to my Patreon subscribers. But as it turns out, this laser engraver is not going to be engraving the text onto the metal. So I got to figure out another way to do that. But yeah, so I made a small pile of these things, and my measurements are just spot on perfect with the original. I messed up a little on the radiusing of the corners. See, like that could be a little better, but for the most part, it was the gauge works. I just need to figure out a way to get the lettering on there. I'm thinking a sticker, maybe a silk screen. I do have an engraving bit for the CNC machine, but that's a whole different ball game as far as workpiece hold down. It'd take me a couple of days to figure out how to get that done right. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Anyway, so that was the plan, make a bunch of these gauges and give them away, but that's going to have to wait. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Please stop buying Amazon or cheap import water pump kits. Buy OEM. Your engine will thank you. Otherwise, thanks for watching. See you next time.